Trying very hard not to implode.
You and the other 68 million people in this country.
Millions of pensioners have just had their winter fuel allowance taken away. I'm really getting embarrassed, Ben. Embarrassed to be British.
It wasn't the Tories who released 1,700 violent criminals to make way for people who've done offensive tweets. It wasn't the Tories who spent £11 billion immediately coming into office on foreign climate change projects. Starmer has taken the United Kingdom to its knees. They should be booted out of government. How much more of this can the British people take?
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Open Your Eyes. In today's discussion, we are challenging your perceptions and also to spark a very important debate. In a world where political decisions seem increasingly disconnected from the everyday lives of ordinary citizens, we find ourselves at a crossroads. The recent moves and decisions by our leaders are not just headlines, they're shaping the very fabric of our society. Today, we're not just scratching the surface, we're diving deep into the implications of these decisions, questioning the motives behind them, and exploring how they reflect on our collective future. Are we witnessing a dramatic shift, or is this just another chapter in a familiar narrative? Let's dissect this reality of our situation and question whether the status quo truly serves us. Let's dive in.
Trying very hard not to implode.
You and the other 68 million people in this country.
I know. So millions of pensioners have just had their winter fuel allowance taken away. They then hear that he's not going to guarantee to continue support for pensioner discounts on council tax. Unbelievable. Optics are awful. But at the same time, we are sat watching thugs and criminals covered in tattoos, in Gucci trainers, getting let out of prison early to allow more space, getting into expensive cars when they're being doused with champagne and driving off into the distance saying, "Thank you, Keir, or I'll be back." I'm very... you laugh. I'm proud to be British. I'm really getting embarrassed, Ben. Embarrassed to be British.
I mean, you couldn't make this up. As awful as the Conservative Party was, and as relevant as some of the criticism Starmer may have made of Sunak, not having built enough prisons, etc., it wasn't the Tories who released 1,700 violent criminals to make way for people who've done offensive tweets. It wasn't the Tories who he repeatedly accused of being tempted to remove the winter fuel benefits. It wasn't the Tories who did it. It was him. And it wasn't the Tories who spent £11 billion immediately coming into office on foreign climate change projects. It wasn't the Tories who have basically thrown away every deportation plan that we had for illegal migrants, any form of attempt of a deterrent, not that I was the planner of the Rwanda scheme, and basically accelerated asylum applications so that those who come into this country know that they will be given safe passage and settled in this country. Starmer has taken the United Kingdom to its knees within 9 weeks of being in government. And everything he does attests to the fact that the Labour Party, and him particularly as Prime Minister, should be nowhere near their respective offices. They should be booted out of government. And the question now that arises is, how much more of this can the British people take? I don't think they're going to take a lot, Jeremy. It doesn't matter whether you're left-wing, centre, right-wing, a globalist, a nationalist, whatever your political disposition, no one is going to be comfortable with thousands of prisoners being released, put in hotels, asylum seekers being rushed through the process, the elderly being abused. Remember, we locked up the country to protect the lives, principally of the elderly who were vulnerable to the virus. That cost this country £500 billion. And now to save £1.5 billion, he has literally, by his own party's assessment, put 4,000 lives at risk. That's how many people.
First up, let's talk about the winter fuel allowance cuts for pensioners. How is it that the very people who built this country are now being left out in the cold? What message does this send about our priorities? And if that wasn't alarming enough, the potential halt of pensioner discounts on council tax adds another layer of concern. Are we witnessing a shift in how we value our elderly, Or is this a calculated move to manage budgets at their expense? Meanwhile, the scene gets even more unsettling. We're seeing violent criminals, some with long histories of serious offences, released early from prison. They're driving off in luxury cars, celebrating their newfound freedom, while hard-working citizens face stricter penalties. Is this justice, or have we simply lost our way? How did we end up in a situation where it seems like the law-abiding are punished, and those who flout the law are rewarded? This isn't just a policy issue, it's a deep-seated problem with our approach to governance. Consider this: £11 billion spent on foreign climate projects while other domestic policies crumble under pressure. Is this spending spree truly in our best interest, or is it a misallocation of resources? What are the long-term consequences of these choices for our country? I'm guessing the real question is, how much more can we tolerate before it becomes too much? Is the British public ready to stand up and demand accountability, or will we continue to accept these questionable decisions as the new norm?
It's astonishing, Ben, and it's astonishing. It is astonishing, and you end up thinking, and I mean, I was saying earlier, right? I don't know who is talking to him. I don't know who's in charge of optics. You would think, even at that moment, somebody just said it in his ear, mate, this is your poll tax. Maybe he's so, I don't know, doesn't listen, believes in this big majority. This is not going to go away. Somebody said to me earlier, they will remember, pensioners, 10 million of them, 20% of our population, they will remember exactly that Keir Starmer made them cold, and potentially, it's just written by his own people before the bedwetters get hold of me, right? It could potentially kill up to 4,000 pensioners. You're so right. We've got this black hole. We've got this problem. I'll give my union mates a big pay rise. I'm not going to give anybody else. We're going to take it away from pensioners. We're going to allow thugs who break the law to come out early, and we're basically saying to them, do you know what? Doesn't matter that you broke the law. Sod the victim. We're going to put you in a nice hotel. It makes people go, do you know what? Why am I working, grafting, paying my tax, staying on the right side of the law and doing everything decent? Why don't I just break the law? Listen, May can't come soon enough, because this party, this government is going to be destroyed in the May elections without any shadow of a doubt. Destroyed. It
is. I think we're going to see a very substantial shift in public opinion, if we're not already experiencing it, which will manifest itself at the polls very, very quickly.
And do you know what somebody said to me the other day? Somebody said to me, and it was Andy Williams, I think, if I'm misquoting him, it was a Labour voice that comes on this show, and he said, I think this is a massive mistake, and he said, I wouldn't count out by Christmas that reform would either be second or leading in opinion polls, because people are hacked off with what they see as their worth, their country, their investment in their country being ridden roughshod over whilst they're demoted to 10th most important person. The guy rang and he said, I worked all my life, Jez, all my life. I've never asked for jack. And the first time I want something, I can't get anything. Nothing at all. Dreadful.
It's an affront. It's an affront to the British people. But we've seen this repeatedly with the Labour Party. They champion causes and they pursue projects which are detrimental to the United Kingdom.
That's very true.
You know, we've seen it with their asylum policy, with their climate policy. Let's not forget the winter fuel allowance actually only ameliorates some of the damage done by this ridiculous drive towards net zero. Fuel bills would be a lot lower if we weren't dependent on having to import liquefied natural gas from the United States of America because we shut down our own blooming gas fields.
Oh, God.
I mean, the whole thing is just, we are damaging ourselves repeatedly. We're like a child, an adolescent who is self-harming. That is what's happening to the United Kingdom. We are self-harming repeatedly. And it's absolutely appalling.
Do you think he thinks he's untouchable, Ben? Do you think that's what it is? Do you think that it is this blinkered seeming... I mean, 50 of his own MPs. I mean, he halved his majority last night. Does he think that he's in such a position, hear me out, say that he can do whatever? I don't think that. I think and somebody laughed at me. They said, you always say the same thing. I think this comes back to what I said before he got elected. The tent is so wide, He won an election against a party that the public had stopped listening to. He didn't give us a plan. He didn't need to. You win general elections by telling the British public, this is what's wrong with your life and this is who's to blame for it. You don't have to come up with a plan. I don't think he's
Absolutely
got a plan, right? And I think he's arrived here. He's got the unions saying we want a pay rise. He's promised to do this to the NHS and net zero. I think that what I would call average, and I'm not talking about that, all the people go, oh, it's all right for you to say, I'm talking about working class people who are no longer represented by the Labour Party or the Tory Party, are going to be looking at this and going, hold on a second. What do you get for loyalty, hard work, dedication, tax paying, staying on the right side of the law? You get screwed. That's why reform,
Absolutely.
and I've said it to you before, I hate the people that say, oh, reform's far right. When I was growing up, the language reform uses is what the Tory party, Conservative governments used to talk about. That is why people are listening to reform. Got to be the truth.
It's a pro-British, aspirational, economically growing, driven agenda that reform wants to deliver. It wants to make the United Kingdom an independent, sovereign, proud, prosperous country, putting national interest first and British citizens' interest first. It's what governments used to want to do. But over the last 25, Blair started this rot, this inexorable drive towards agendas which are antipathetic to the United Kingdom, all started by Blair, and they've suddenly become turbocharged under Keir Starmer. And I think you're right. It's not going to take long before he falls flat on his face. Even with a 175-seat majority, he's going to fall flat on his face. The country is not going to stand for this. And the 1,700 prisoners he released today, they're going to do 5,000 in the next few weeks. This is just the beginning.
Do you know what I said? I'd build more prisons, I'd double the sentences, I'd make all of them serve the entire sentence
Absolutely
that they've been put in prison for. Because to me, you're saying, break the law, we'll let you out halfway. Nowadays, you can be out in, a few days, because you know what? We need more space. Do me a favour.
Absolutely.
That's lawlessness, isn't it?
It is. It's his response to illegal migration, which is to speed up the asylum process, encourage them to come to the UK. It's his approach to law and order is to basically say you will not be punished. That encourages criminality.
Of course it does.
And it's also his approach to the unions by saying, if you go on strike, we'll just break and we'll give you what you want. This government cannot govern. It's got no backbone. It won't stand up for us. And people will see it. They're seeing it. I'm seeing it everywhere. It's not just Karen Vorderman, who was such a critic of the Conservative Party. She's now up in arms about Labour. And it's not going to be long before their own grassroots, to the extent they've got any. I don't know where their grassroots are. I think they mostly live in Islington. But it won't be long before even the Islington lot say enough is enough. You're out, mate. You can't release prisoners.
Now, we've talked a lot about immigration. I'm going to salute Germany have extended border controls, right? Germany, ladies and gentlemen, Germany have extended border controls, and they are currently being heavily criticised by their European neighbours who are going, oh, that's outrageous, and they're going, there are borders and we're going to control them. And I think the Germans should be saluted, don't you?
Absolutely. Thank goodness sense is prevailing. I've said for many years that the migrant crisis we've got is nothing to do with Brexit. It's everything to do with borders not existing in Europe. Because once you're into the Balkans or Italy, you can go freely where you want to. Germany has imposed borders. And guess what? Other nations like Austria, the Netherlands, France, and saying, oh my goodness, how dare you put up your borders? Because now we might have more people directed towards us. Well, guess what? Put up your own borders. If they all put up their borders, they won't have illegal migrants going through Europe. They'll stop coming into Europe because they know that they won't be able to settle in the continent. Put up borders. Borders exist for a good reason. We need a strong France. We need a strong Germany. We need Germany, France, Italy, Switzerland, Poland, the Netherlands, all of those countries with strong borders and strong sense of national identities, protecting their people the way we should be protecting our people, like we used to for hundreds of years.
You're like me. We're actually going to implode.
As we look ahead, the stakes are higher than ever, with growing frustration and a real desire for change. The push for something different has never felt more urgent. Reform UK is stepping up with a vision that emphasises common sense and the needs of the British people. They're offering an alternative that many are hoping could bring a fresh perspective to our current challenges and bringing the British back to Britain. But will they be able to deliver on those promises? As we move forward, we need to ask ourselves, will the current administration tackle these pressing issues, or will we face more of the same? The pressure is mounting and public patience seems to be running very thin. Stick with us as we dive deeper into these developments and keep those in power accountable. We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep seeking the truth.